Let's start with the hard question. I'm an investor. We don't invest in EdTech anymore. We think it's a dead business. We think there are two companies who conquered 85% of the EdTech world, and actually all the promises we have for so many EdTech companies are not materializing. What would you have to answer for that, Yaron?
So it's called EdTech, but really at the end of it is content. And so the way we think about it at Outbrain is we think about our boss being the consumer downstairs walking the street and what they consume. And they're not interested in EdTech, but they are very interested in content. They're consuming more and more and more of that. We haven't seen any decline in consumption of content. And now the question is, how do you make it sustainable, viable to hire and have journalists creating the content, and how to make it in a way that's sustainable for customers. So I would say to an investor, if you're seeing two things, if you're seeing content decline, content consumption decline, do not invest in the space. But if you're seeing it go up, you should invest. And if you're seeing ads being a fantastic experience that consumers actually appreciate and go to over and over, then do not invest in any new or other company than those two. If those two conditions aren't happening, if people are consuming content and ads are not great value creating for users, there's still a lot of investment to be had.
Okay. Stefan Lorker is the CEO for the World Federation of Advertisers, say the following: "We have heard the message loud and clear. An increasing number of people are not satisfied with the online ad experience, and they are voting with their feet. The ad industry needs to better understand what is driving them to opt for ad blocking and address the underlying issues heads on. Brand owners are determined to take the lead." Itamar, what do we have to say about it?
So, two things. I think one, for me in EdTech, the two main maybe important things is scale and data. I think that companies like Facebook that have the scale in terms of the distribution advertisers would want, but also have the data and the targeting that the ads will be better. That's the approach to attack this. I think if you take an ad and people that see it more as content discovery, this is exactly what I wanted to see, that's where ads will become more interesting. I think ad blocking and the rise of that is an indication of this exact problem, but ad formats, targeting, transparency and fraud detection is the way to attack that.
But you know,
I would like just to add, I think that it's part of the evolution of the ad tech is that if at the beginning it was all around performance marketing and how much value you can get from the user, part of the evolution of the industry is what value you can bring to the user. And I think that as long as you use the platform with the tools that create engagement with the user and adding value to the user, to the ad tech companies or marketing technology companies, has a lot of room for growth and future development in improving the experience of the user online.
Honestly, I gave the same answer when I was an EdTech entrepreneur myself, and I think that's the right answer for the entrepreneur. But unfortunately, the audience do not think we bring any value to them. 408 million people are actively, on March 2016, blocking any ads from their browser. They don't believe advertisement brings them any value. They want to block it and consider it as pollution. How do we cope with people that believe that what we do for living is polluting their experience? Greggory.
Yeah, I do believe that the ad blocking is shaking the industry, the publishing industry, for the better. So meaning we put back the user in the middle of the discussions, which is something good. We need to review the practice. Of course, pop-up interstitials and everything is not acceptable. Then what you name an intrusive ad needs to be defined. And the one thing I can share is at Criteo, we are part of the acceptable ad programs of AO as an example. And what we see is that people with ad blocking that are seeing our ads, part of this program, are clicking and converting better than people who don't have an ad blocking. So meaning that when you propose the right advertising to people that is personalized to them, and also when you limit the environment of advertising, so you have less ads. When you surf, you tend to react more and interact more with the brands and
okay.
e-commerce.
So we say the answer is kind of like have less advertisement, less polluting the experience, less spamming the user. But in reality, in the last 3 years, most of the advertising were around having more advertisement because actually effective CPM dropped. So you need more and more advertisement in order to sustain the monetization of the user. So most publishers actually adopted a more aggressive advertising approach. Pop-unders, interstitial, you name it. More banners, more actually formats that depriving the user from the experience they want. So publishers are in stress. They are going against what you are preaching, bring value or bring less ads which will convert. Ron, how do we solve it?
I think your two questions converge into the right answer, which is obviously touching on native advertising and contextual, whether it's programmatic television and addressable television. So I'll go back to your first question and how it connects. And we, by the way, as a video platform that's serving a lot of video for a lot of purposes, are touching the three parts. We're not an ad tech, we're not a marketing tech, and we're not a content company, but we're touching all three. So we see all of them and how they come together. There's two ways of making money out of advertising, or in general out of content. One is selling content to people who want to see it, and the other is selling the advertising or selling the eyeballs to the advertisers. That's the only two ways of making money. The latter is becoming commoditized because of the likes of Google, etc. And the first of selling content to people who want to get it will never become commoditized because it's a long tail experience. There's a lot of different pieces of content and it will not be connected. So what you're seeing in the ecosystem in general is that in that content, market tech, ad tech, that is the order of strategic importance. Content number one, market tech number two, which is still connected to the content and pushing it to the people. And number three is ad tech, which is connected to the people, but the connection to the people is going to be commoditized. So everybody's running to content, whether a long time ago Comcast bought NBC, and now everybody's talking about AT&T that's buying Time Warner Inc. Everybody wants to own content because they're going to be commoditized. By the way, not only if you're connected to the advertising, if you're the cable infrastructure, that's going to get out because you don't need that. You just need to have a good content and the way to send it out. So on the advertising side, if you connect it to the content, DSP, marketing tech, and contextual delivery so that it's relevant. And the ad blocking side and video, you find that 30% of the folks are blocking video. They're blocking it because it's at the beginning of the content, it's because it's autoplay. So the current definition of acceptable ads are if it's not at the beginning, not a pre-roll, and if it's not autoplay. If you avoid that and do a fast forward and connect it to being relevant to the content, they accept it, and they're willing to accept it.
Ron, I totally agree with you. You need to have the content relevant and the video not interfering. But the truth of the matter that we know, and actually this exploded a few months ago, that most of the video advertisement were actually doing it, what we call the less than 3 seconds actually watching of the video, and they counted it as if someone viewed the ad. So we know there was a lot of fraud around there, and we know that actually the measurements for video and how much video people consumed were very far from the reality. How would you actually react to people that don't believe the numbers anymore?
Well, they shouldn't believe the number. Let's go backwards. I mean, would you believe Nielsen? And it doesn't make any sense. So now when you're looking at programmatic television and you're looking at addressable television, you're looking at the information coming from the set-top box, to start understanding, first of all, who's the person. Put aside what they're doing right now. Let's best understand who we're serving it to. And once we serve the right content to the right person, put aside what they've just consumed, you're already halfway there. And that's something like 1.7% right now of the ads are addressable right now. That's a very, very small part, but it's growing at 100% year over year on television.
Cool.
So that's going to get there. When we get to the right people, we could later talk about the right context.
Yaron, are we really getting now to the right people with the content that we are actually delivering them?
Yeah, of course. The people are getting to the content, so they're obviously the right people. I think about the question of ad blocking. It's at the essence, it's an issue of re-educating a generation or two that we spoiled, and it's our fault basically as an industry to have provided all the content on the internet for free, and I think we educated a whole generation that because it's accessible for free, it's free to produce. And it's sort of what happened in music. I'm optimistic because music fixed it. Now we pay for music and we didn't a decade ago. I think at the end of it, it's obviously better ads and all that, but the audience needs to understand that content has a price, a cost to produce, and the only one that sets the price of the content, whether it's priced through ads or priced through subscriptions, is the publisher. There's no one else. I think there's a generation that feels, if we told them that this is like going into a bookstore and choosing the books they like, and then saying, you know what, that whole paying for it is really annoying to me. Standing in line and taking out my credit card, that's annoying. I'll just skip that. I'll take the books and go out. That would seem ridiculous, but that's exactly what ad blocking is.
So basically what you are projecting, and Ido, I want your take on it, kind of the leadership that Ghostwriter took in this kind of like domain. Do you believe that we are back into subscription model or back into paying walls with good content, or people will be willing to actually pay for good content and saying, okay, we don't want bad content that's coming for free with so many ads, we want good content and we are willing to pay?
So I think that first of all, people likes to pay for stuff that brings value to them. And I think this is the challenge, not just to ad tech or marketing technology, it's a challenge for every industry that's working in a B2C space. As long as your product is valuable and brings genuine value to the user will be keen to pay. And you need to provide them very good experience or user experience that he will come back and pay again.
But, when I look to some of the publishers I follow, and I think some of the publishers create amazing content, incredible, intellectually stimulating content that I like. I got too used to the idea that I get it for free. And most of the publishers are actually too afraid to now impose any kind of like payment wall. They know that Wall Street Journal did so, they know the New York Times, but they're too afraid to actually lose their audience and now going to the advertisers or the brand and saying, okay, we lost 80% of actually our readership. It's a better readership, but we lost our readership.
The millennials think differently. It turns out, and we're Generation X, hate to date our age, but it turns out that the younger generation are fine to pay for something that they're getting.
I want Ron out of the panel. He said I'm from the old generation.
But in reality, we're from the Napster age. And I was like, hey, we could get away and get it for free. Why not get it for free? And the young guys are like, no, it's worth something. You should get something. And so if you look at the subscription VOD and the word of OTT, which we, for example, serve, there's 170 of these in the US alone. And if you look at AVOD with advertising, there's barely any of these because people would rather go for SVOD and they're happy to pay the money if they don't need to.
And I think we will see a lot of innovation in the monetization. I think that it's not just if you serve ads to the user or not. There are different ways to make money as a producer or publisher and still provide good experience to the user.
Now let's ask the hard question. We thought we really have competition in ad tech. We saw thousands of companies starting and delivering a better ad experience, interactive ad experience, measurable ad experience, monetizable ad experience, so many ad experience. But the truth of the matter is that 85%, 85 cents out of any dollar spent now on ad is going to either Google or Facebook. So basically, at least one thing shows that Google and Facebook got it right. They deliver ads that apparently the brands or the marketeers believe that is relevant and they should pay their cents. And only 15 cents are going to all other thousands of ad tech companies. Are we going to see a change in it, or are we going to see an increase in this duopoly that really have the ad experience right?
So
Itamar.
first, this industry is so big, and last year was more than $100 billion, so even the 15% is big. I think Facebook and Google for sure will dominate, but there's a lot of problems around on counting only on them. First, in emerging markets, they're pretty weak. I mean, Southeast Asia, India, in these markets, definitely you will need more solutions. Second, from a regulation perspective, there is some things that Facebook, I believe, will not be able to do or will not want to do. We see that in retargeting, in commerce already.
Would we really rely on regulation to save the industry?
No. I mean, in terms of if Facebook can take more and Google more than 85%, I think it will be hard for them to take more than that because of emerging markets, some data and regulation and privacy issues, but mainly that prices are very dependent on the season. So before like a Black Friday, brands will have huge bids for the offers, and then if you count only on Facebook and Google, you'll see a decrease in your numbers.
I understand, but now that's a question for you, Ido. I take Yaron's point, and I admire what he's done with the Outbrain. I take his point about personalizing the experience or getting to understand what the user wants. Ron says it's about the content, about the experience. And I follow, I agree. But apparently, where we have the experience, is the social environment. That's where our friends are. That's where we vote with our like and share and with our postings. That's what we show what we really care for. And they demonstrate that actually they personalize the experience perfectly, and all other companies are just trying to collect more and more data, more intrusively, more infringing upon our privacy in order to get to something which will be equivalent or similar to them. But why would I need that? They cracked it with the personalization format.
I think that there is a bigger picture than just the social, and obviously socially is and will be key component in the future of the industry. I think that there are a lot of ways to interact with the user and create user profile that doesn't create any disruption or intrusive to the user that will help us to improve. And I think that the personalization of the interface in content, in video, in any platform is something that will be even better in the future. And it's all about, it will be driven by the data.
But Ido, the problem is that we saw this distinction between that's the publisher who governs the content, and here is the advertiser who actually rides on the content. The advertisers were not the one to personalize the content, to make the content more relevant to me. That was the hard task with the publishers, which were actually not enjoying the monetization that was created. How can we actually create an advertisement which is content aware or personalized aware without being too intrusive with our experience?
I think that I will take it to a different direction. I think that all the companies in ad tech and marketing technologies, at the end of the day, they're driving the wheels of internet. I think that to build up a successful internet company, it's a combination between the right distribution and the right content. And I think that here you have a good example of companies that took it to improve the content or produce better content that is more tailor-made to the users. And companies like Crossride, Glispa, that are more focused on the distribution and to be able to generate the demand for online products.
One thing to add here, I think in ad tech, it's a problem to be both a supply and a demand-oriented company. I mean, if you want to sell the ads for cheap or for expensive and more or less quality, the interests are different. If you choose a natural place from an exchange perspective, then something in the service will lack. So I mean, even Facebook and Google, when technology will be better, will need to choose a side here. And the other side, we'll need to find other solutions.
Georgi, I have a question for you. I know that Criteo really cracked it right in the retargeting market and how you do kind of like e-commerce well. However, I think everybody looked at it and were stunned. And last week, with Alibaba saying $17.5 billion in one day. Apparently, the Chinese singles are buying a lot. How would we copy this experience that apparently is happening so well in China into the Western world?
Well, I mean, Alibaba is one of a kind, right? I mean, the guys were having 175,000 orders per second, during that day on peak time. So it's just huge. If you take the US, you have Amazon, that is 38% of the e-commerce business. Then eBay is 10, and then the rest is, the 52% left. So I think the solution there is to try to benefit from the network effect. So get the e-commerce guys work together to share their data, and get technology providers help them to do something with it.
Georgi, I want to understand. Apparently, Alibaba did something really well. For Israelis, I can tell you, we thought the postal services are dead. Now postal services in Israel are in ever-time rise. Why so? Because we are shipping from China, everything. We buy everything in China and ship it to Israel. They're doing something well with e-commerce. But apparently, the Westerns are not following as good as Alibaba. What is the secret formula? What is the secret sauce that we need to copy in order not to get all the commerce shifting to China?
It's not an easy one. It's definitely not an easy one. It's ever going to shift to China or to US. I mean, if you see also market share of Amazon in Germany, it's above 60%. So what they have, I mean, like, price-wise, they are doing really good. Delivery service is good. Client service is good. So they work really hard on that. The only way for e-commerce clients I see to compete is trying to get their strengths together. That's the only way they can compete. It's just the scale effect. The network effect is very important. And Alibaba reached such a a high, penetration in the market. They are with JD.com in China. They are the only one that makes sense in China. So you just need to syndicate, what you do with your competitors to be able to compete against the really big guys.
Yaron, I'm really interested. You were really pioneers in taking NLP and actually understanding what the content is and actually creating a meaningful experience that would bring me ads that are, or content which is relevant to me. How do we do the next step that actually not only creates something which is relevant for the content I consume, but is relevant for me, that knows me and what actually I care about?
Yeah, so we do a lot of NLP in understanding the context of the page. That is actually one of the worst indicators of what's going to be interesting for you. So the algorithms that usually work best is understanding what the user is interested in, finding users that are similar, and then recommending what was interesting for them, which sometimes seems completely irrelevant. The way we like to think about it is if you open your Kälkälist in the morning and you're flipping through the pages, you're not expecting contextual relevancy from page to page, because if you do, there's one front page story, and then all the rest are going to be very boring, very relevant, but very boring. And so we think about this as how to do intelligent serendipity.
Now I have, it's not that I'm a bad guy, but I was asked by Kälkליסט to ask the hard questions. I was giving a keynote where came one of the leaders of one of the biggest advertising companies. And we're talking about ad fraud. This elephant in the market that no one wants to talk about, that actually something between 37% to 55%, depends who you're asking, admits that 37% to 55% of the ads that allegedly, being viewed or being served to people are actually fraudulent. It's either bots, it's either never viewed, it's either not adapted to the machine, so it's not relevant. So this leader in the industry told me that when he goes and buys now advertisement from any source, he thinks that he's buying from a drug dealer, a heroin dealer. He says, I have probably some real material here, and it's blended with a lot of sand or a lot of fake material. We see a reaction. For the first time, advertisers and brands saying, we don't trust the numbers anymore. We know that actually the numbers given to us for what's the ads being served and what sites they are being placed are fake. How do we deal with this major problem that is about to ring our industry? How do we fight ad fraud? Itamar.
So first, I think the problem why fraud became such a big issue is because of short-term versus long-term looking from the advertiser's perspective. A lot of the fraud, if you look at it from a short-term KPI, looks amazing. Why? Because it can be organic install that is high quality, and that's and until recently, companies were looking too short term. I think that fraud. So, in order to eliminate fraud, first I think the publisher and the advertiser should be more closely in terms of their relationship. I think middlemen are not really part of this.
Itamar, let's be honest with each other.
Yeah.
They don't have the incentive to work closely with each other because they benefit from the fraud.
So
when someone benefits from the fraud, they don't have really an interest to clean the network. It
depends. If I'm a media buyer from Uber and I want to show good results for my manager, yes, for me fraud will be great. But from a higher perspective, fraud will not serve the company. I think companies, advertisers that work with, for example, in mobile, with SDK companies that have more transparency and more control over the traffic, will see a huge decrease in fraud.
Yaron?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to the pricing model, which creates the fraud. There's basically three models. There's CPM, which is I just pay for the view. There's no accountability on the side of the publisher. There's CPA, which I just pay for purchases. There's no accountability on the side of the marketer. And there's CPC, which shares the risk. CPM, I think, is the culprit of basically all the fraud. I would say probably Criteo and Outbrain have zero or close to zero fraud because it's not a model that allows for a lot of fraud. And I think in general, the whole CPM world will probably have to change because of that and other things.
Actually, you are projecting that we'll get rid of CPM because CPM is just an incentive for fraud. We'll have to shift to a more auditable and actionable model, either CPA or CPC, in order to make sure that now the publishers don't have incentive to show fraudulent ads anymore?
Yeah, so I don't think CPM is completely going away, but I think it has to really become a much smaller piece of the ad pie because of two reasons. One is is publisher fraud. The second is CPM is, this answers maybe the question about Facebook and Google of why they're taking so much of the market share. And I think one of the reasons is the fundamental business model of publishers, I think, is based on a completely wrong assumption, or business model, which is RPM or CPM, and we focus on that. You have all these companies in the 15% optimizing for RPM or CPM, and that, as a user, as our bosses, the people down in the street reading our stuff, they do not care about RPM. They're not looking at a link or an ad and saying, the RPM here, it's so amazing, I better look what's happening there, right?
Cool. We have very short time left, and I want to focus on the future rather than on the problems that we have today. Many in the investment industry and many kind of like leaders of the ad tech market believe that AR, augmented reality, is the next big thing with advertising. They believe that we're going to monetize the physical environment by injecting both advertisement, marketing content, offering interactive monetization on the physical environment. What's your take on it, and what will take to have an effective AR experience in the physical world?
First, I would say that I think MR is the future of AR. MR is mixed reality, and we can speak about the differences and if the interaction between the physical and virtual pixels in the world. I think VR will not be as big as people predict, but that will bring the fundamentals for VR and AR. And I think location-based and online-offline connection is why MR will become huge.
I think that it's a new platform that the users will be present there. It's like we didn't speak about the chatbot, but I think it's very similar that companies like us needs to be where the users are, where we can generate the traffic. And I think that the VR has an amazing opportunity of improving or what we can do and what are the experiences or the journey that we can take the user through this online activity.
Okay. For e-commerce, I mean, what you see is the walls between on and offline are fading away. So I believe with the mobile, everything that will be enhancing the experience of users in stores and everything will be something good. So we do believe in AR. We do believe in ShopBot as well, in artificial intelligence being your digital assistant for shopping.
I think AR is going to support contextuality because there's going to be stuff that's connected to where you are, and therefore it's going to be better targeting and more engagement. I think VR is going to solve a bigger issue. There's big things that we've been trying to grapple as human beings. That's a limitation of time and space. Time is for a different day, but space is the ability to get somewhere. VR could take you anywhere, including somewhere that's imaginary. And how is that related? Just because it's going to be like drugs. People are not going to get off it. And therefore, it's going to be so engaging that then you can put any advertising you want. Just because they're engaged in the process, they're going to enjoy the advertising. So in one, it'll be really good stuff. The other one, we're going to take it like drugs.
I'll be the contrarian. To me, it seems a bit like Second Life, where we should all have a presence in Second Life. So maybe in 5 years it's not a big issue, but I'm probably wrong.
That's because you're enjoying your first life.
I actually enjoyed my first life to have the ability to chat with such amazing leaders of the industry in a panel. So thank you for the opportunity and hope to continue the conversation.